What's up? Welcome to the Viking Squad Show. I'm Sam Ekstrom. In case we can't come to an agreement with the company before the season starts, we'll be training replacement podcasters.
What's happening? Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. Again, not keeping track, but just so you know, 14 days, 7 hours, 46 minutes until the NFL draft.
Reggie Wilson and Sexy Dexy. Could he look good in Vikings purple?
I'm Alec Lewis. Really focused on the Masters right now, but if you guys want to talk about the Vikings, I mean, we can do it.
Skol! It's the Viking Squad. Everything Minnesota Vikings. Skol! It's the Viking Squad. Everything Minnesota Vikings every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the land of 10,000 lakes. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to gear up. The Viking Squad Show starts now.
Sorry for the fumble on the intro video. Welcome in, Viking Squad Show. We appreciate you being here, streaming on Locked On Vikings. On today's show, do the Vikings have any magic left from 2024 that they can duplicate in 2026? We'll discuss the Dexter Lawrence possibility at length. Does it make sense for the Minnesota Vikings? There's a Bill Barnwell draft day trade idea with a division rival. That always works out well. Plus, athlete-centric mock drafts, focusing on athleticism in the 2026 draft class. But let's dive right in with Alec, Reggie, Luke, and myself. The Vikings are an every other year team. Alec, you haven't been here that long, but you've probably realized it at this point. Every other year, there's some magic, and then the ensuing years is usually disappointment off of high expectations. And this year would be a positive year in that trend if the Vikings can find some of that 2024 magic that they captured with Sam Darnold and went 14-3 and lost in the first round of the playoffs, but really had a fantastic season, kind of like the magic they captured in 2022. So how can they duplicate some of that in 2026? Alec, can you find any common ground between this team shaping up and that 2014 with Darnold?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with better quarterback play. That is the low-hanging fruit that would produce a result similar to 2024 and 2022. But I will say this, and like this is probably a little more meta, but I remember before the 2024 season being in training camp and feeling like they felt, the players, the coaches felt a little bit discounted or disregarded. There was a motivational undercurrent of how I felt they were operating in training in the spring, summer, and training camp. And I'm just not going to be at all surprised if coming off the season that we're coming off of, and all of the alterations and adjustments and narratives and all of that, if I arrive at the TCO Performance Center and watch some of the spring and summer workouts and training camp and feel like they believe they're going to be better than people think. And when that is the case, I think that serves as like propulsion fuel. I did see Project Hail Mary, so propulsion fuel for the team in 2026. So yeah, I'm not going to be surprised at all if I get that vibe and if it does produce results this upcoming fall.
Yeah, Inman, they get to play the underdog card. This has been back to Zimmer, I don't know, back to Childress. Like this seems to be the Minnesota Vikings, that when you count them out is when they do their best. And it's going to come down to Kyler Murray. Like, we know that. Sam Darnold was obviously ready to break out, and that was the difference between the Vikings being middling and the Vikings being an elite contender. It's going to come down to Kyler Murray. We get that. But are there any other pieces of this team that you think can kind of mirror what we saw in 24?
Yeah, again, like you guys pointed out, only natural to kind of start with the quarterback. Can KOC kind of replicate that quarterback ecosystem, if you will, for Kyler Murray, same way he did for Sam Darnold? But how about the defense, man? Like, the defense, clearly, you mentioned Zimmer, even going back to Zimmer's best years, 2017, right? The defense has always been during their best years, kind of the backbone of this team. They were the real identity. They were the ones that, created the turnovers, the short fields for the offense, the forced the 3-and-outs for the offense, put opposing defenses back out there for the majority of every game, kind of wore opposing defenses down as well in that sense. So they led the league with 33 turnovers, I believe, 24 picks, 9 fumbles, something like that. Can you replicate anything close to the same type of turnover ratio they had that year? Last year, they weren't even close, right? If you take out that Bengals game in week 3, when they had, 5 turnovers in that one game, the kind of game-by-game average gets way worse. And already wasn't that good last year. So can they get back to kind of wreaking that havoc, putting that stress on the quarterback and the offensive line, creating that constant pressure, both physically, sure, but like mentally with Flores more than anything else? All the exotic looks, all the simulated pressures where you think they're sending the house and then they drop everyone back. And now you're confused. You're thinking on the fly. Can you get back to that kind of top 5 defense, that elite kind of category, I guess, that kind of pedigree that Flores is known for, that I think, when I think back to 2024, Sam Darnold, definitely the offense number 1, but the defense is pretty close behind for sure.
Yeah, Reg, that 24 team got wind in their sails early. I don't want to say it was a cakewalk win, but a bad Giants team in week 1. All right, built some confidence. Then you've got a good 49ers team, a good Texans team, Green Bay on the road, Jets in London. Quality wins in the mix. And you know what I found when I look back? Trench control in those first 5 games. They ran the crap out of the ball for 5 games. They outrushed all of their first 5 opponents. They held their opponents to 3.1 yards per carry in those first 5 games with a front line of Bullard, Tillery, and Phillips. Not necessarily household names except for Harrison Phillips. The trench control is what was missing last year. And I think that's a really simple solution to say, how can we be a little more dominant up front? Let's just control the run like way, way better than we did last year.
Yeah. I have vivid memories of that season. Just Brian Flores, just that mad scientist. And, after that game against the Texans, which nobody really saw coming, Stephon Diggs going up to Flo and just like, hey, man, stop running 0. And he was just like super frustrated, but it was like a game recognized game respect type situation. And yeah, they were dominating up front. I mean, the Packers made a surge in that game, in that second half, really passing the ball. But before that, I mean, it was a dominating performance for a half by the Vikings on offense and defense, just slowing the Packers down on offense and then just going right at them. And then you talk about trench play, even on the other side, running the football. First 4 weeks of the season, you got 94 yards from Jones, 82 from Chandler, 102 from Jones, 93 from Jones in that Green Bay game. Like, they were running the ball at a great clip. And Aaron Jones really looked like the guy that they signed and they needed for that offense to go. And so you look at that formula, and I think it could be replicated. I think there's still some things to be done. Up front in the trenches, you got some guys that you believe in, an ascending player at defensive tackle. But then I do think you need to kind of shore up some of that depth. You still got Van Ginkel screaming off the edge, waiting to take a screen pass to the house. And then I think Grenard's gonna be motivated after the season he had last year. If it works out and he stays, I think he's gonna be ready to prove some things. And Dallas Turner, hopefully he continues to take another step. So I think, and if they get things kind of shored up on that back end, I think maybe as the offense could try to get things going a little bit more and get his feet set a little bit, maybe the defense can anchor them a little bit better to start. They started that season on that 5-game win streak, and you're like, oh man, like this team is cooking with Sam Darnold. But really, Darnold, that 97-yard pass to Justin Jefferson in the 49ers game where he just like uncorked it down the middle was still probably the most impressive pass that I've seen maybe ever. That was an incredible play. And so you saw Sam Darnold make some plays, but it wasn't all on his shoulders. And I think if you think about last season, there are probably 4 or 5 games that maybe the Vikings win if they have just competent quarterback play. The defense kept them in it. And if they just had competent quarterback play, you're talking about a team that may, be in that playoffs last year. And I just think those things, if those things remain constant, and as Alex said, if they just have like a baseline of better quarterback play, I can see them kind of coming out with that chip on their shoulder and making a run. And then if you think about that year, I know you said, Sam, they're an every other year team. Well, that year that Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles, like they were probably headed towards some good things that year. So it's maybe it's Vikings football. I've covered them for the last 5 seasons, so like I kind of understand the trends, but there's just some funky things that usually happen every other year that prevent them from being as consistent as maybe they like to be. And for their sake, they're hoping that this baseline quarterback play can help them get over the top.
They operate in these. Yeah. Go ahead, Luke.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, Reggie brought up 3 key names here. You brought up Aaron Jones and the number, easy to forget the numbers he put up early in that 2024 season. Big boy numbers, right? Van Ginkel, and then even Kirk Cousins in 2023. And I think it all comes back to health too, right? Like, and you can apply that for both sides of the ball, but staying healthy is going to be such a huge catalyst to having success in this league. You can say that for any team, but it feels like a lot of good teams can get by with good coaching and good quarterback play, but a banged up roster by the end of the year, still muster out 9-10 wins. But if you're talking about, a dominant run, a dominant football team, a 14-win football team, you almost have to have, your entire core, right? Your nucleus of top tier talent, those starters intact. And I feel because of that, you could say injury luck is definitely a huge factor. Injury luck is almost like the hidden MVP candidate, like it was in 2024 when, again, you think back to that season, almost every starter, by and large, plays a huge chunk of that entire season. Like Van Ginkel last year, right? We talked about that. Misses a huge chunk with the neck injury. Maybe was never 100% all year after that. He was a beast in 2024. You mentioned the Giant game. Like he set the tone in New York week 1 for that defense with that pick 6 on that screen pass. I mean, he was a total X factor that year with multiple defensive touchdowns. Jonathan Grenard was healthy. He was dominant all year in 2024. Cashman missed those 2 games in the middle of the year versus the Rams. I think that was the Thursday night game, which was the blown no-call face mask to Darnold to end it. And then the next week was the Lions game. The very next week, they lost both those games after starting 5-0. And we kind of all realized how important, how impactful Blake Cashman was for all the communication, the pre-snap alignment stuff and all that. So, bottom line, I feel like you got to say health luck, injury luck, however you want to call it, which unfortunately sometimes obviously just a part of the game, but there is a lot of luck involved in that because it's such a long, physically demanding ask for these guys to play these 17 games plus playoffs now.
Yeah, the major regressions, Alec, the Vikings operate in the extremes with some of these luck-based figures, like takeaway regression last year. Huge reason why the defense had some struggles middle of the year because they weren't able to take the ball away. They had 8 interceptions last year, tied for 27th in the league. They had the health regression that Inman just detailed really well. I think I've given the stat before and I forget it, but I think they were something like 5-1 when Grenard and Van Ginkel both played, and they rarely did. And then you've got the 1-score game regression going from 9-1 the year before, bet 5-4 last year, still above 500. But I think there's a plausible belief, Alec, that you could reverse a lot of that going into 2026 and you could have better health, particularly on defense. You could take the ball away at more of a league average rate. You could win some more of those tight games. Like that's all very believable that could lead to a few extra wins.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, frankly, is tied together. The takeaways, the trenches. Like one of the components, the quarterback play, one of the components of 2025 was the Vikings offense struggled so mightily that they were often trailing in games. So what does trailing early mean? It means the opposing team can run the football. If your defense is built to where you believe you're going to have leads and defend the pass more, then you're not going to be as effective at stopping the run, which means turnovers are less likely. So it's all pretty interconnected. And why I believe, again, like I do think it starts with the quarterback play. I think having an offense that can provide this defense, leads. It's kind of like, I mean, this is a weird analogy probably, but it's like when you're playing Texas Hold'em and you have a ton of chips early, like you can get more aggressive. And I think for the defense, like when you're leading early, you can let it rip even more, which some of those risks can lead to turnovers. So I'm not going to be surprised at all if there's a pretty clear path. And then the schedule, I mean, which you guys all touched on, but Sam, like you talked about it, like the schedule last year was not phenomenal, where you've got to go to Dublin, to London, and play back-to-back weeks. I mean, it was just topsy-turvy to where you didn't feel like you could really settle in until week 8, week 9 of the season. And I don't expect that to be the case in 2026. And that will probably help everything: health, continuity, consistency. So there's 100% a path to this being more of a 2024 vibe type of year, I think.
I think that's such a good point. Just real quick, I want to touch on that. How many times do we get the schedule at the beginning of the year? We go up and down. We go win, loss, win, and then you get to like week 3. You're playing the Bengals. Joe Burrow's not even out there. Like, it's just hard. Obviously, they're going to have this third place schedule this year. That's definitely going to help, as you pointed out, Alec, as opposed to playing the first place lineup they had last year. And then you need those one-score games to flip back to in your favor as well. Maybe it's not 11-0 in 2022 with Cousins, but you got to come close to it, which I know is asking a lot, but so is asking, how do you get to 14 wins and only lose 3, right? Because in this league, there's so much parity. The difference between the best team and the worst team is so small compared to other sports. And that's why we love it too. I mean, look at what's happening in the NBA right now. And, the tanking, you got 9 teams that are just atrocious. They lose by 22 every night. By and large, like you don't see that in the NFL. So my point is, you can't bank on blowing out a lot of teams every week. Sure, maybe you get a couple of those every year in the season, but a lot of these games are coming down to fourth quarters. They come down to who's got the ball last. It comes down to coaching. Comes down to execution, clock management, all that good stuff. And again, if you want to get to 14 wins, you got to be really good at the things that equate to actually winning football games, which, ultimately is winning in crunch time too.
When we return, we're going to get Reggie to talk more about Sexy Dexy like he teased in the cold open. Can't wait for some Dexter Lawrence deep dive next. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are coming up. Every possession matters. Every matchup is magnified. Every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. You can bet $5, get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Go and find one of those tanking teams Inman just talked about. Bet against them on the money line, like the Wizards, the Pacers right now. You bet against them, you're a 99% cinch to get that $5 win, secure the $250. Who cares if you win 10 cents on the $5 bet? And then you get to have some fun with the NBA playoffs. The app makes it really easy. You can get insightful stats, trends, matchups. It's all in one place. And the playoffs, everything ratchets up a notch in intensity. You can take some over-unders on some of the stars, Anthony Edwards, see if he can come back from injury and make some plays. Maybe he'll be well-rested. Head to FanDuel.com. Check it all out. Get started. Bet $5. Get $250 if you win. FanDuel. Play your game. Luke Braun on Locked On Vikings. Check him out and subscribe to the channel. You can find our video, Locked On Vikings. We're streaming live. Luke is streaming over there, not always live. And the audio, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Now, Reggie, we brought this up initially on Monday. It was just breaking. The Dexter Lawrence had requested a trade. Now we've had some time to think about it for the last 72 hours. And I want to know where you stand. Does this make sense? Dexter Lawrence, would the Vikings pick up the phone, make a phone call, put together a package, and see if it works for a guy that's considered the elite of the elite at his position?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the opportunity to get a player of his caliber, you make a call to see what's up. I wonder what the asking price is though, because you're talking about a Vikings team, they are Kevin Seifert said they're eating their vegetables this offseason. And so I think when you think about their process this offseason, like do they do something like that really kind of rocks the plan of what we've seen so far this offseason? And you kind of think about maybe what the return would be, maybe a one and some stuff. I'm not really sure exactly what the Giants will want in return. Obviously, he would be a great player to put it along that front in Brian Flores' defense and really kind of take that front over the top. I mean, you're talking about one of the best interior defenders in football. And so, and just an exciting guy, I think that the locker room would embrace as well. Like, so if you have an opportunity to bring someone like that in, I think you maybe take the chance. But here's the thing. He wants a new deal. He doesn't have any more guaranteed dollars left on his contract. You're probably talking about upwards of like 30 or so milli for him a year, which is absurd to think about. Also absurd, you got Jonathan Grenard on your squad who wants a new deal, and you bring in Dexter Lawrence, give up a 1+ or at least just a 1 to bring in Dexter Lawrence, and then you immediately give him a new deal. Now JG's like, excuse me, hello, I've been here. I wanted a new deal. What's up? Why can't I be appeased in that? And so I think maybe there's a little bit of friction there if you do a deal like that. But I think obviously adding a player of his caliber would do wonders for that defense. You just wonder, if it does anything else in the structure of that locker room.
Yeah, if you're choosing, Alec, between, because I don't think you can afford both, Grenard and Lawrence. I actually was surprised by this. Lawrence is younger than Jonathan Grenard by 6 months. Did not think that was true. That is the reality. I thought it was reversed. But if you're entertaining extending Dexter Lawrence, and Reggie's right, we're talking $30 million here. Grenard might cost less. Why wouldn't you just pay Grenard that money? Like, why would you choose Dexter Lawrence over Jonathan Grenard? And then, like, what, you're gonna get draft picks for Grenard and give them right back for Lawrence? It seems like kind of just a weird approach when Grenard has been one of your guys, and you probably can get him for a little bit less.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe anybody's reported that like the Vikings are trying to make this happen. So it feels like very much like guys maybe wants a trade, and we're Vikings fans and we want good players, which like it's totally understandable. Dexter Lawrence is a phenomenal player, and he is. I think if you were to make the argument, Sam, which like I don't know if I would, but like if you're a fan wanting to make the argument, you'd be like, well, it's much harder to find an interior defender who can pressure the quarterback like Dexter Lawrence can than it is, then it's easier to find, or then it's harder to find an edge rusher who could potentially have the production that Jonathan Grenard has had. That's not like a knock on Jonathan Grenard. It's just the rarity of finding interior defenders who are that talented. But yeah, I mean, as far as weighing those two, like you're talking about a draft package plus the money that you're going to have to pay Dexter Lawrence plus, I mean, I believe he's had some injury stuff in his recent history that you would factor in compared to the Jonathan Grenard, situation. So I'd say I totally get the conversation from a we want good players standpoint, but when you factor in the money, the draft compensation, how they've structured the salary cap, it's a pretty tough needle to think about, them threading.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if this was Madden and we could turn off the salary cap, done deal, right? It's tough to say what the final compensation is going to be. They're going to do, the Giants, that is, everything they can to get a first rounder back. And ultimately, I do think one team out there is probably going to be willing to part with that. But I'm sure if you If you think you're only one or two pieces away, though, too, then you probably think your first rounder is going to be in the mid to late 20s. So there is that kind of factor. But even more than the draft picks and the compensation, as you guys both pointed out, it's really about the money. I think you're talking about arguably the best, complete run stopping, pass rushing defensive tackle in the league. Now that Aaron Donald's out of the league for a while, Chris Jones obviously up there as well. But it's such an X factor to have a guy that can collapse the pocket, create interior pressure. There's really nothing more valuable than that on defense nowadays. And so I think rightfully he's going to be probably paid when it's all said and done as a top 2, top 3 defensive tackle at minimum, if not the highest defensive tackle. So when you think about everything they've done to clear this cap space for 2027 and beyond and eat those vegetables and, how hard they worked and all the time and effort and energy and game planning they put into just breathing some life back into this roster financially for the long term, are they really going to go out the very first opportunity they have and kind of, drop an anvil right into the boat and sink the whole cash flow again? It's pretty hard for me to say yes. Again, as good as the guy is, and he is so good, he's truly elite at what he does. This organization, it feels like, just in general, doesn't take a ton of, home run type of swings like this. And when they do go spend a lot of money, it hasn't always worked out. Last year, obviously, an easy example. Sam, I think back to even the offseason, what was that, 2008? They spent all that money on Bernard Berrien, the safety from Cincinnati. Played like 6 games, had the neck injury, got like $16 million guaranteed, which was bonkers for a safety back then. Madeu Williams, there you go, Madeu Williams. But I doubt they're going to take a big swing like this, just because it just doesn't really add up to everything they've done prior to this to kind of, again, get this financial cap space, not just for this year, but again, 2027 and beyond, in a good, healthy position.
Yeah. You get rid of Hargrave. You get rid of Jonathan Allen. You're trying to get right cap-wise and trim some fat. And yes, great player. But do you want to sign him for $30 million a year through his age 32 season? I don't know. That would be the type of gamble that you would not make as an interim general manager if you're Rob Brzezinski. That seems like a little too big a swing. But some of these stats, though, from Warren Sharp were mind-boggling on Dexter Lawrence. This is the case for him. Since 2022, when lined up as a nose, he has 108 pressures. The next highest is Vita Vea at 32. So a 76 pressure difference between number 1 and number 2.
I think about half those came on Garrett Bradbury, I think.
Okay, so subtract the Bradbury pressures, and then it's like 54 to 32. So still a nice lead. Double teamed at the highest rate since 2024, still produces. Someone's going to get a baller. I don't know why. I feel like it's going to be the Eagles because they get these guys. But Reg, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sitting here kind of playing devil's advocate with myself. Yes, they've swung and missed on a lot of pricey free agents, but the one time they did give up a first and a third for a defensive lineman, it was for Jared Allen. They gave him a new contract, which was top end at the time, and seem to remember that working out pretty good for the Vikings as well. So I don't know what the lesson is. Maybe it's if you're going to hit a certain threshold of money, if we're going to pay 27 or 28, why don't just go the extra mile and make sure you're getting an absolute premium player at a premium position? To your point with those stats from Warren Sharp, Dexter definitely checks all those boxes.
Reg, how big a need is defensive tackle for you right now? It's shaping up. It's Redmond, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, Levi Drake Rodriguez. It's not a high profile room. I think we all know Jalen Redmond is a baller. The league might not yet, but they'll figure it out. But it's not stacked with talent. Do you think they still have significant need there?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think, if they still had even just like Harrison Phillips, that would be a healthy help for them. So I think, I didn't know if maybe they would try to address that in the draft, or, a guy like Dalvin Tomlinson, who I've mentioned before, still out there, could help as a veteran. So I think there's a need there. Do you swing for the fences for someone like Dexter Lawrence? I think to Alex's point, like, I don't know that maybe that's the answer. obviously it'd be a great, dream of a situation if they can make it happen. But, I do think that there's a need to, I wouldn't say upgrade there, but there's a need to really get another bona fide guy in the room.
I'd also say this. I mean, you're in position to make these types of moves if you've got a ton of young talent who is cost controlled over time. And this team, very clearly, I mean, you can see it from the outside, and I also know it from talking to people on the inside. Like, they know they have to get younger and start to establish the runway for the next core into the future. And if you're parting with really premium draft capital, like, you're going to affect your ability to do that. Now, sometimes the premium draft capital is not guaranteed. So you have to weigh those facets. And then to Sam's question, interior defensive line is definitely a need. The hard part with this specific draft is there are a lot of early guys who are more nose tackle types. And Brian Flores, as we saw with Harrison Phillips and Jonathan Bullard, has trended away from those types with kind of how to set his front. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do there, but would be pretty surprised if they left this draft without one of those guys.
Well, maybe they can get one in the top 60 picks. Bill Barnwell suggests a draft day trade with a division rival that could yield such a pick. We'll dive into that next. This episode brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient. Sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers. Emailing back and forth, wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve, while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. I set a record this year, filed the taxes with TurboTax before April 1st. Personal best. Slapped myself on the back for that. Bill Barnwell released a not a mock draft, but a bunch of theoretical trades that could be made on draft day. And this was his suggestion on the Minnesota Vikings. It was with the Chicago Bears. Now, we know the history of trading with the division rival. Obviously, Jamison Williams, Lewis Cine, pick 12 for 32, nightmares. Barnwell suggests moving back to 25 with the Bears, acquiring pick number 60 in the second round, and then throwing in a fifth-round pick back to the Bears. So you move back 7 spots with the Bears and acquire a second. 10 out of 10 times, I'm in. I'm in with this deal because you have tell me if I'm wrong, Inman, our draft guru, feels like you have about the same chance to hit with 18 as you do 25. This is not 12 versus 32. You're still going to get a great player at 25. You're going to get a great player at 18, and you're going to have to make the right pick. But to get the second is a huge prize. And we talked yesterday or last show about how difficult it is to find a trade partner. And that trading back could really benefit this organization to get another second-round pick. A starting caliber player could be enormous. I'm in. I don't care if it's a division rival at all. Don't care. I would say yes to that deal every time if I'm Rob Brzezinski. How about you?
Yeah, I'm with you, especially in this draft class too. I mean, you got your blue chip guys up there, those first 5, 7 picks. And then, yeah, it really does feel like, sure, there's some tiers, definitely tiers 1, 2, and 3, but it definitely feels like anything in this top 60, top 75-ish, you're getting some good football players here. And I'm with you too, as far as, first of all, you got to ask yourself, who are the Bears trading up for? But, if you can swing that deal, all the better. But as far as trading in the division, like if you think you're making your team better, I don't really care who you trade with. I don't think they should care either, in my opinion. Maybe that starts with just having the confidence in your scouting department and your GM to get a fair deal and then just go draft good football players no matter where you're picking. I'll never forget when they made that move with the Lions in 2022, Kwesi's first year. And I remember everybody was up in arms about trading in the division. You can't trade with a division rival. I remember thinking, who cares? Like, I could care less as long as you get a good deal and then go hit your pick. 5 minutes later, I got the trade compensation. I almost threw up in my mouth because they didn't get a future first, moving all the way back from 12 to 28. But I digress. Same premise applies here, though, with Chicago or any team for that matter. No team should be off limits as long as you think you're getting, good, fair, healthy compensation. I'm always in the camp with you, Sam, that, this thing is not an exact science. The team with the most lottery tickets or scratch offs, right, typically is going to have the best odds when we look back 2-3 years down the road. So I would absolutely love to slide back a little bit. We've talked about the targets, whether it's at 18 or 25. There's some good safeties there. There's a couple good defensive tackles. There's a couple good corners sitting there. Somebody's going to fall right in your lap at 25 as well. And to get that extra 60th overall pick, again, we've talked about, they just need so much depth. And to inject some more youth into this roster down the road. So I'm totally for it.
Yeah. And in some ways you could convince yourself, hey, we're taking an asset away from a division rival. We're actually weakening them by making this trade because now we're going to get that extra starting caliber player. Reggie, your thoughts on the Barnwell scenario?
Yeah, Sam, that might be a bit of a stretch on weakening the division opponent, but
you're fleecing them.
Sure. I think trading back probably gives some Vikings fans a little PTSD. But Kwesi had drafting kind of that kind of marred his tenure in Minnesota. And if maybe you have a little bit more confidence in Rob Brzezinski and some of the other personnel staff who are there to make better draft decisions, then maybe you're okay with that. I just think, Luke, you always say, go get your guys. Like that's your motto. If there's a guy that you are sold on, and if you have a chance to maybe get Harry's heir apparent at safety, I think you stick there and make the pick, because you go back to 25. I did see Peter Schrager's draft. He has Thieneman like at the end of round 1, so you could possibly try to wait it out. But I just go back to the draft where they got McCarthy, them feeling like they needed to move up a spot to make sure that they got one of the guys that they wanted. I think these drafts are so unpredictable, and there are guys that could fall and guys that are gonna be there at 25 that maybe you feel like you can take best player available and all that. But if you have a guy that you want to go get, and you have a guy that is there and available at your original draft spot, I think you just take that person. I understand everyone's logic though with gaining another premium pick, because then you can kind of replenish, because they are an old team and they do need to infuse some good young talent into the mix there. But you just there's just no promises there. And I think if you have a chance to get someone, I just think back to the Vikings could have Kyle Hamilton. The Vikings could have had Jameson Williams. It worked out because they ended up getting Jordan Addison the next year. Like, that's great. But, all this time they've been looking for that heir apparent for Harry, and they waited out in the offseason to, see if he's going to come back or not. And then he ultimately comes back. And I think that probably happens again this offseason. We'll see what happens. But if they have a guy kind of in the wings already, then maybe that process is not so antiquated. And it's like, hey, if you want to come back, we'll have you back, a great veteran voice in the room. But Kyle Hamilton was right there for the taking the last time. And they traded all the way back and got a guy who's, I guess he did win a Super Bowl, but he's not contributing anything meaningful in the league right now, and that's a shame.
Alec, your thoughts?
This one's kind of tough for me because the trade back idea is sensible, and the idea of generating another day 2 pick. Like I've had a lot of conversations with this week with people in the league, and they're like, I haven't written reports of guys who I think are exceptional, but I do think there are a lot of starting players in that range. So the idea of getting another dart to throw in that range is so enticing to me, but balancing it with the idea of trading within the division and what that would entail and the narratives to follow, like that's just really difficult. So for me, I mean, I would expect them to have conversations of a potential trade back. I would also expect them to be fairly reticent in doing that within the division. But I get you guys' perspective, Sam and Luke, whether you're both like, I don't care who it is, as long as you're generating another pick. So that I think you guys made really good points there. It was kind of fun listening and trying to see if you could sway me. But eventually, I think I got to a place where it's like doing it within the division is a little too much for me. You'd probably just rather, stick and pick. But there is, I think, from a 20 to 30 range in this draft, like there would be a list of 4 or 5 guys where you're like confident those guys could be good players, but also, you're not ecstatic about them, which is why you'd be willing to trade back. So, with what's possible. And then I also, I don't think safety, everyone has linked safety, and I get why, and I'm not going to be surprised if that happens. But just because the idea that Harrison Smith might move on, like that just does not mean you have to take a safety in the first round. And it's also a position where as much as athleticism matters, like instincts are really important, and you can often find guys with instincts later on. So, yeah, it's a lot of ramble for me, but I don't know. I have hesitancy doing it within the division. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, Inman's talked at length about safety. I think there's a lot of spots to get safety in this draft, and including like right now, PFF Big Board. If you make this trade, move back to the second round, trade in Stukes, number 61. You've talked about Bud Clark, Luke, like safety, and the Vikings have a track record as well. And I think this is true around the league. You can find safeties. There usually is, some decent safety depth in the draft. I think it's an easier position to acclimate into the league early because you're not necessarily defending on an island like you are at cornerback. That's probably not, you don't need to force feed that selection in the first round. I think, we've talked so much about this too, but a BPA approach within reason.
Well, if you have a need, like here's what I'd say, like safety is a need right now, but like with every decision they've made this offseason, they're playing more of a long game, not like a 4 years down the road long game, but like we're looking at 2 years down the road type of long game. And in 2 years down the road, you might have needs at tight end, running back, tackle, edge rusher, defensive line. So there are a ton of possibilities. Now, to Reggie's point, if internally they love Dylan Thieneman, which I have not received word that, it is head over heels and, this is a no-brainer type situation. Until I do, like I'm a little more open with it. But if they do feel that way, then at 18, it probably just makes sense to make that happen. And that's not to say anything about Dylan Thieneman. I think he's a great player. Character is phenomenal. I know some people on the Oregon staff, they rave about him. So, I think the BPA approach, everyone talks about it. Everyone wants to take BPA. It's the most sexy, I'm a GM, I'm going to say the right thing line. PR says to tell them that. It's a no-brainer. But they are in a position where they actually can do that, I think.
And I messed up. Stukes is not a safety. I don't know what I was talking about. But Inman, if you're given...
No, he is. He is, Sam.
He might be listed at corner on there, but I mean, there's definitely a world, maybe more likely world, where he goes to the NFL is kind of a true free safety for sure. So some of these guys got good flexibility.
He's definitely in the mix, Sam. Like if they don't take a safety in round 1 and he's available at 49, like that is, that would be interesting. Now, I've talked to some people in the league who don't think he'll get to 49, but he is a nickel-ish safety, versatile chess piece, smart enough. It's a good fit.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it was on crazy pills there for a minute. Inman, so if you're faced with Thieneman versus McNeil Warren in the first round, are you leaning a certain way?
There's been so much hype, right? So much connection to Thieneman. But when I look at just overall best football player, going BPA, and then also what Brian Flores is going to like to do, just the instincts. I think Alec pointed out a really good point about safeties. They thrive on good instincts. Sometimes, we get a little bit too enamored with the athletic profile. Thieneman had one of the best combines we've seen from a safety in a long time. But I think McNeil Warren's instincts down in the box, a phenomenal tackler, and ball instincts too. Like he's so well-rounded, whether it's the pass or the run game. I lean a little bit more towards McNeil Warren personally. If I was just on the clock and I had to pick one, right now I lean McNeil Warren. Not to say, again, Thieneman's a bad player by any means, but especially I think it goes back to if both of them are on the board, which Thieneman might not be, but if both of them are, and you also like a guy like the Clemson corner, or maybe there's some defensive tackles in the mix. It just makes more sense if you have them all kind of in that same tier. Rick Spielman used to talk about he had the tiers, right? These tiers of guys, right? And I love that philosophy because it doesn't pigeonhole you, and it takes some pressure off you as well when you're finally on the clock and you got 2-3 guys staring you in the face. So all the more reason, whether it's the Bears in the division or just anybody who's ever calling, right? I'm all for trading down if you are in a situation where there's multiple guys sitting there on the clock.
Inman's going to give us his prospect of the day when we come back after a very short pause, plus some mock draft fun. Rolling on Vikings Squad Show. Make sure you check out Locked on Vikings. Again, Luke Braun hosts, and we'll have plenty of content coming at you 2 weeks from today on Draft Day. Let's play the prospect of the day gong. Inman is going to give us killer prospects.
Yeah, so I think just looking at this draft, I mean, we kind of just touched on it, but just from its best strengths, its weaknesses, I kind of think of three things or three position groups. There's a lot of really good secondary players, which we just went over in these top 50, 60 picks. I love whether it's at safety or corner. I'm really intrigued by some of these kind of round 4, round 5-ish tight ends. I think there's a lot of intriguing, good options, kind of pick your flavor, but especially for what KOC is going to look for. And then I know it's a little bit more of a devalued position now, kind of like safety and running back, but I'm really digging these first 2 tiers of linebackers in this class too. I just think there's going to be a lot of good football players that are safe, kind of high floor, high IQ picks that are going to end up contributing the next 4 or 5 years at minimum. So I want to highlight one of them. I think could be there with one of those 2 third-round picks. Being we got 2 Missouri guys on the show, Josiah Trotter, first off the bloodlines, son of all-time Eagles great Jeremiah Trotter. His brother got drafted from Clemson a few years ago. A little bit more of an athlete, a little bit more undersized, but I think Josiah is a lot more like his dad, more of a downhill thumper role, which, again, I know that's a little bit more devalued now in today's pass-happy league, but he's just so good at what he's good at. And they just, the Vikings, they just need good football players right now. You think about Eric Wilson. He balled out last year. They bring him back. That's more of a short-term option. As Alex said, they're looking at, not just this year, but beyond. Here's your long-term option as that kind of pass rushing, get in the backfield, wreak some havoc, downhill linebacker. Starts at West Virginia, ends up winning the Defensive Conference Player of the Year with 92 tackles. That was in 2024. Comes over to Missouri, leads the team with 84 tackles, tied for first on that defense with 13 tackles for loss. So, again, just a nose for the football, finds a way to get in the backfield, be a disruptor. He's a baby. He's 20 years old. I think he's going to be 21 this month, maybe by draft day, but he's just scratching the surface, despite, again, playing like a guy who's been a leader, who looks like he's just played a ton of football in a lot of different ways, 6'2", 240. And again, just kind of a magnet to the football. South Carolina game, 11 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hurries, Oklahoma game, 13 tackles. Arkansas game against Mike Washington Jr., who's got a lot of buzz at running back after the combine, had 10 tackles in that game. Alabama and Auburn both had 8 tackles apiece. So my point with that is he shows up in the big-time games against some of the big-time competition when you need him the most. He was just a pillar of consistency, whether that's at West Virginia or at Missouri. And that's kind of what I love. Guys who can show you it wasn't a fluke. They transfer, completely different program, completely different scheme, new coaches, new teammates playing next to you. He was on all the time, and that switch was flipped. And again, he was just very dependable no matter the jersey. So you think the name Trotter, you think linebacker, you think good football player, his dad, his big bro, now him stepping into the spotlight. I think he's got starter quality written all over him. Maybe it's in a little bit of a sub-package role, right? Maybe more of a first and second down guy, but I think a great rotational piece and a guy who can learn behind Eric Wilson. They'll almost certainly need to start looking for a replacement in the next year or two, you would think, for that Eric Wilson role. So Trotter from Missouri, maybe one of those 2 third-round picks. He might not even be there, actually, with one of those 2 third-round picks. You never.
We've got 2 Missouri alums on the show. What's it called in movies where you play to the crowd? Crowd pleasers. That was a crowd pleaser here on the podcast because we got the 2 Missouri guys grinning ear to ear.
Thank you.
What's the scouting report? What do you like about Trotter, you guys? You guys probably watched him.
Reggie, what do you got?
I got nothing.
It's funny. I've seen his name a lot in the draft cycle, and I have not gone back and watched the film. I've seen some clips where he is like big time run defender.
Yeah.
The hard part about the Flores defense is like, yeah, I mean, there is the Eric Wilson role where you're blitzing all the time. You're kind of like a run and hit type. You can line up a little bit on the edge. The harder answer to come up with is like, what happens if Blake Cashman is not extended? Can you find a guy in coverage who also has that type of player is really, really hard to find. It's why I still think Blake Cashman is underrated.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it would be interesting when they tried off-ball linebacker last year with Kobe King, and he didn't last very long. It seems, and Luke, you could probably speak to this way more than I could. Like, seems like a really tough position to evaluate because it's such an instinctive, reactionary pattern recognition, like filter through the mess type of position. It's a fun one to talk about.
Yeah, I know he's not the athlete versatile. Not to say that he's a bad athlete, but he's not the athletic versatile chess piece like the Kyle Lewis from Pitt, which you've pointed him out, and I love that fit. More for the Blake Cashman type of role, but here's a guy who, again, this team just kind of needs everything, and I think more than anything at this point, this is like what prospect of the day, 12, 13. I'm just trying to point out some good. Who I think is going to be good football players, whether they're on the Vikings or not. But certainly you pose a good point that Cashman's probably the much more valuable linebacker of the 2. And somebody like a Kyle Lewis, again, just for example, would probably be maximizing your value a little bit better in the 3rd round. But say Trotter fell to the 4th round. This is the funny game we play about the draft. All of a sudden it's like, oh, now I feel like I'm getting great value, even though maybe, he's more of a 2-down type of guy, still adding a really good football player.
I would say the Vikings' eye for linebackers has been plus, like identifying Cashman as a great fit when his career to that point had been good, not great, didn't have a huge track record. Camu Grugier-Hill was a good depth piece. Look what they do with Eric Wilson. I'm still saying Ivan Pace was a hit because he was a UDFA, and look what they found, even though things kind of went pear-shaped.
Who's the dude we got from Arizona who hopped around everywhere?
Jordan
Philly.
Hicks.
Jordan Hicks.
2
years here. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So I trust their evaluation on linebackers, Kobe King notwithstanding. I put together a mock draft with a focus on athleticism, and I'd like you guys to rip it apart. I'll show it to you now. I've got it. I've got the screenshot. This is what I came up with. McNeil Warren in the 1st round. I think Luke likes that one. Then I go with Malachi Lawrence at 49. Got a C+ grade on that pick. But again, I'm looking at athletes. Malachi Lawrence was a 4.52 40 time. So for that reason, I'm in on Malachi Lawrence. Where'd we go here? Kyle Lewis, under talked about. Good linebacker, though, from Pitt with 82.
Good
Jake
last
Slaughter.
name, too.
Yeah, Kyle Lewis. Jake Slaughter, another good last name. He's an athlete at center. And then we get a little obscure in day 3. DeMonte Capehart. He's a defensive tackle that can move. From that point, I go with Jadon Kennedy, Taylon Green, fun quarterback, and a couple 7th-round guys. But what do you think of my athleticism picks here, you guys?
I think Taylon Green is like the absolute freak of the class, like one of the most explosive athletes, not just at quarterback, but the entire draft. 6'6", 227. He ran a 4.36. I think he jumped like almost 44 inches, maybe 43.5 inches. That's like that's like Anthony Richardson type stuff who went top 5. So I'm big on him just as an athlete. Not necessarily a
Does he
quarterback.
remain as a quarterback, though?
Well, maybe it's the Joe Webb. We talked about it on Monday. Maybe it's the Joe Webb type of transition into wideout or something. But he's just fun, right? He's just freaky. And then Kyle Lewis, who, just kind of brought up, he had a fantastic combine. I think he had the second best 3-cone at 6.90 behind only Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech. So agility, right? Sideline to sideline stuff. Alec, you pointed him out. It's kind of this hybrid linebacker, maybe strong safety type dude. He's super athletic as well, and I'm very intrigued, for the Vikings specifically and Flores as well for somebody like Kyle Lewis from Pitt. So 2 really great athletes right there at linebacker and quarterback.
Sam, I think the most likely player on this whole thing is the center, who may not be the best athlete.
That felt like a steal to me. Slaughter at 97.
Yeah.
Felt really, really, really
That's
good.
about, it feels like there's this clump of centers that we just have. It only takes one team to fall in love, right? But Connor Lew tore his ACL. He'd probably be the number 1 center if he was fully healthy or didn't miss last year from Auburn. Logan Jones has got a lot of buzz. I think Logan Jones had one of the best athletic profiles of any center. That's center and offensive lineman, I will say, with these athletic profiles. Not all offensive linemen are built the same, right? So you get a lot of huge contrast from one guy to the next. But Logan Jones, 6'3", 300, looked really good athletically in all the combine drills in Indy, and was just kind of, when you look at his testing numbers, was kind of consistently above average to even great in some categories in all those testing numbers. But to your point, Sam, Jake Slaughter had a really good combine as well. But it's just kind of pick your flavor, it feels like, with offensive linemen.
Did anybody else put together an all athletes mock, or am I the only crazy one that did it?
You're the only crazy one.
I'm the only psycho that did this.
My favorite was, you said, DeMonte Capehart is a defensive lineman who can move. I mean, that is critical. They must be.
He ain't wrong.
Moving is critical. No, I mean, I did say him the other day. I've got access to next gen stats, so I've got like the combine mile per hour numbers, and it was interesting. Like a guy you've heard a lot, probably Damon Claiborne, the running back from Wake Forest. Like that dude lights those like mile per hour stuff up. And so I think like it'll be interesting to see with him. Does he check? He's supposed to visit. Does he check all the other boxes? I think that would be the question there. But like I think where I'd look for athleticism the most, if I were a fan, like trying to project what they're going to do in this draft, like running back would be a spot that it feels like they very much, would need it. Other than that, I mean, the way they look at a lot of these positions is smarts, fluidity, production, instinctiveness. Like they took in 2022, Quase's first draft, there was a lot of athletic traits. And I'd say the more time has passed, the more coaching influence that has been present, the more it's been about production. Keenan McCardell, what is he like? He likes ball tracking. He likes route running. Like they all kind of have their specific flavor. So, it's kind of how I look at it.
We do have one. Inman delivers. What do you got?
On the fly. Well, again, as far as just freak athlete, Thieneman's combine was just nutty, right? At that 6 foot, 200, 4.35, crazy vert. All these verts, man. It feels like the new average of vertical jumping is like way better than it ever used to be. But how about Alex guy, D'Angelo Pons, Didn't run at the combine, but runs a freaky 4.31 at his pro day. And then at 5'9", jumps through the gym, 43.5-inch vertical. Talk about a guy who could, get up and be a disruptor at the catch point or on those 50-50 balls and kind of shed some of that small label as far as going up and getting the ball as well as just being a freak athlete too. So got to love him. The tape is even better than the numbers, which you love to see as well. And then, Sam, you pointed out Darrell Jackson Jr. He's a monster, 11-inch hands, big boy. Pad level gets a little high sometimes. I think that's why he's kind of more of a third, fourth round pick. Who else? Sam Roush. I'll just call this out real quick. Freak Raz scored 9.99. Sam, maybe I brought him up right after the combine, but you shouldn't be able to be 6'6", almost 270 pounds, and run a 4.7 40. Like that's not legal in most states. Sam, correct me if I'm wrong.
Felony.
Right. A 39-inch vert, 10.6 broad. I love this guy on day 3. I think this is a guy for KOC with the actual size and strength to be like a real inline tight end, but can also be a threat in the passing game as well. So just wasn't used a ton at Stanford, but now we see the athletic profile. You go back and watch some tape. He is athletic. He's natural as a pass catcher. And again, when I think about KOC's offense, you get into rounds 4 and 5 if this guy's still on the board. Again, I feel like we've talked about every single position's a need, but tight end maybe for 2027. I'd love to get him in the building a year early and start developing now.
I'm sold. I'm sold on this guy. Great first name. We can get Kyle Lewis for Alec. We can get Sam Roush for me. Are there any Reggies or Wilson?
Reggie Virgil, the receiver for Reggie. I will say this, and it'll be real quick. I was talking to a scout the other day, and we were going through the cornerbacks, and I was like, what do you think of Pons? And he's like, man, I love this guy. Like, is he small? Yeah, but like, man, you watch the tape. And so, I mean, I can't wait to see where he goes just because you're not going to find, I mean, even in the industry, that's how people feel about him. So
I said this last week. It just feels like an Antoine Winfield Jr. situation where it's like, everybody knows this guy's going to be good. Why are we even getting into the nitpicky side, little undersized? What's his true position? Just draft good football players, man. And D'Angelo Pons definitely feels like that. I would be surprised if he ends up going like top 40, top 45, but you never know.
Great show, guys. Thanks for your work. Thanks for your efforts. Thanks for your thoughts. We'll be back on Monday on the Vikings Squad Show. We should hear from Tyler Fornes on that day. Spinman will be here. I'll be here. Can't wait. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll talk to you next week. You're on the #1 sports podcast network, the Locked On Podcast Network.